Welcome to Ladyguns Live. My name is Deneen Tomlin, tonight's host and founder of Ladyguns. What is Ladyguns? We're a community of shooting, hunting, and outdoor enthusiasts who like to get off the sidelines and live our best life. Casey and I are shooting competitors, instructors, hunters, and mentors, and we love inviting women to get out and give it a go. We hope Ladyguns educates, advocates, and empowers the community to come together, celebrate our adventures, and help each other out. So tonight we are really excited because we're going to talk about food. So we're talking about different ways to prepare wild game with Chef Brianna Kroener from Hunting Season Spices. Hello, Brianna. Say hello to everybody if you want to turn your mic off. On.
Yeah, hi. Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Thanks, Brianna. We
Yeah.
also have a special appearance from Rob Knibbs. I see, Rob, you've turned off your camera and your microphone. Rob is with Bolt Action Coffee, and we're going to find out that Bolt Action Coffee is one of Brianna's secret ingredients. Hello, Rob. Say hello to everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for that. Thank you both for joining us tonight. We're really looking forward to this. I'm also joined this evening by my co-host and co-founder, Casey Gavinchuk. She's also tonight's Q&A and prize coordinator. So the prizes we're giving out tonight are donated by Hunting Season Spices and Bolt Action Coffee. So thank you guys for supporting our Ladyguns tribe. So why don't we just get right into it with you, Brianna, and start asking some of those questions that everybody wants to know. So first and foremost, tell us about you, your background, and your passion for wild game cooking.
Yeah, for sure. So I am a red seal chef of just over 10 years now. I grew up in the bush, so I grew up learning how to cook and forage and just be kind of self-sustained and self-sufficient in the bush. And then that kind of transferred over into the culinary field, where I worked with a lot of bush people, also working with wild game in the kitchen. I worked with a lot of chefs from around Canada that were very familiar with wild game cooking. So they taught me a lot of things very early on, especially a lot of the European chefs. They really had a lot of experience with that. So we brought that to the table in a lot of fine dining restaurants as well. So I kind of wanted to get involved more deeply and more. I just wanted to be more connected with hunting and get back to the bush, because I had spent so much time working in industry as a chef, and it was just not working. It wasn't sustainable anymore. So I decided to start my own business where I would be able to help empower and help teach people how to utilize the wild game that I grew up with and that I respected. And I really wanted to help share that joy and share that respect and share the knowledge that we all need so that we can be respecting the wild game that we are harvesting ourselves, so that we can stay connected. So that's kind of the basics of that story.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. When you and I had a chance to talk a few weeks ago, we talked about how important it was to stay connected to what we harvest, and how important, and I hope we'll get into this later, but how important it is that people understand the difference between wild game and the protein and the meat from something that is commercially raised and prepared. So I hope we'll get into that. So how did Hunting Season Spices come together? Was that a collaboration or was that a vision of yours?
Yeah, well, I had always been helping people with all sorts of different wild game cooking, whether it was doing the actual butchering of the primal cuts or helping to go onto the farms and teach people how to cook certain tough meats and stuff like that. And I always noticed that one thing that really was a hindrance for a lot of people was the flavor profiles that they were working with. A lot of people didn't have an understanding as to the scientific details that some other people might, and that was kind of stopping people and preventing people from getting the most bang for their buck. So I figured that it would be the easiest way to get those good experiences into the hands of hunters and all sorts of people that are cooking wild game would be by providing the flavors that would help enable them to get the best bang for their buck, essentially. Right. So actually, literally right before COVID started, I left the culinary industry professionally. I took off my coat. That was it. And I wanted to start my own business. And I figured that I should just start a spice company where I could do that. And I always had the intention of teaching sustainability and teaching people how to utilize the products as well. And so I just started the business essentially from there.
Wow. And what a good time to start a business. Good for you for sticking to it. That's amazing. So what is your favorite wild game to work with personally?
I love working with bear. Honestly, bear is my favorite. It's like butter and beef, like smashed together. And there are so many possibilities with it. I just love it. The terroir of it is what gets me. And the terroir is essentially the environment that the animal lived during its life that contributes to how its makeup is. So quite often you'll taste hints of berry, or you'll taste hints of pine, or wherever that bear was. And I really love the flavor profile that lends to everything. So
I understand a lot of people take what they call the safe route with bear, and they like to treat it like pork. So they make ham out of it, they make bacon out of it. I had the fabulous opportunity to spend a couple days on horseback with Casey last spring on a bear hunt, and although the experience was amazing, we didn't have a bear in the freezer. So we'll have to try it again and see what we can do. So yeah, I think I've had bear a couple of times, but it sounds like you've got some great ideas that that people could apply to trying bear for the first time, because I think that's a hard thing for people to overcome. And I know that there's some ladies out in my social circle that not only enjoy it, but they like rendering down the bear fat and using it for not only cooking but skin and putting it on their skin.
Yeah,
So
I carry it with me. I always have bear fat on me too, for so many reasons. I love it too. Yeah.
amazing. All right, so let's switch over a little bit about the wild game. There's some do's and don'ts and some things, you talk to people about wild game and they're like, it always tastes so gamey. So so let's talk about the difference between wild game and domestic meat and what makes it taste gamey.
For sure. So quite often, a lot of times when you kill an animal, you don't really know exactly what it was doing right before it died, what it ate, what its last meal was, how stressed out was it, what was it going through mentally and physically, maybe even spiritually. So quite often when an animal's life is ended abruptly, there could be different acids and hormones going throughout their body that will be excreted into the protein when it dies because of the decomposition process. And quite often that's something that leads to that gamey flavor that not a lot of people like, right? Like when I first started this business, I really wanted to I wanted to really work with the people that said that they didn't like deer, like they tried venison once and they just didn't like it. And I don't like that answer. I think it's disrespectful to the animal, but I also think that we can work with that answer and kind of help people understand why they didn't like it. And quite often it's because of those acids that are in the protein. The difference between store-bought and wild caught, I guess. Store-bought is really heavily regulated. It's really heavily monitored. The animals don't really get to live their best life, right? Obviously, we understand the dangers and the horrible things about factory farming and what that does to animals. So if we're going to talk about the stress hormones that are released into wild game, you can only imagine what farm game or farmed animals are going to be having in their systems, right? And that's very toxic to us as human beings as well. It doesn't work with us. It's not how we should be working. So that's always a really interesting thing to be tackling. And that's why I have certain rubs and spice mixtures that are meant to actually take that acid away. I have a carnivore spice that has really strong acids in it that balance out the pre-existing acids. So if you're cooking bear, for example, the carnivore spice is really good for that because it's literally meant to take all that away and then bring out the best flavors of that game. So.
Okay, excellent. So one of the other things that I've been told is that, especially with venison, if there's a lot of fat on the cut, that's where that gamey flavor resides is in that fat. So can you take a cut of meat, trim off the fat, and remove that gamey taste with it? Because obviously you can't change the way it was harvested at that point. It's already in the freezer. So
well, there's a couple of things you can do about that. So addressing the fat thing, there's different types of fat, right? So there's that really, really thick, hard layer of fat that you'll usually find on the very bottom, like the closest to the connective tissue. That's the fat where you're going to find a lot of good flavor. You can find some bad flavor in that, but it's easy to manipulate that fat to bring out that good flavor. So if that's the case, you'll just put a rub on that and you'll really rub that in because the rub is going to have sugar and salt in it that actually break those things down. But the other type of fat that is present on all animals is the external fat, and that's that kind of jelly layer. It's full of collagen. There's collagen and elastin. There's collagen and elastin and all these different things that you work with. I always recommend getting rid of that top layer, also because that's what's exposed to the elements during the harvest. You never know what that layer has. If you do want to get rid of the fat entirely, that's okay. But I always suggest with wild game contributing some type of fat to it, just because fat is flavor. Fat really helps to coat your taste buds and allow you to taste exactly what that game has to offer. And if you do want to do that, there's two ways of doing that. There's barding, which means you take fat and you just drape it over or you wrap it over. So whether that fat is bacon or just fat back or whatever you want, you could just drape it over, and that's how you're going to cook your meat. You could do it on a grill or braise it in your oven or even in your pan. And the fat will absorb into the protein. You can also do larding, which is where you actually inject the fat into the meat. Quite often people do that with pork loin, where they'll cut they'll take a really thin knife, usually a bony knife, and stab into the meat. And that you could either like stuff in bacon, or you could actually inject fat as well. So that will help to reconstitute the fat with the good fat.
So are there, you've talked about lard and a few things, but I mean, there are some creative other types of fats that people can use. There's nuts, nut butters, and those kind of things. Are there any good pairings that you recommend in that, we've got olive oil and sesame seed, avocado, all those kind of things.
Yeah. So if you're going to be using other oils, say, for example, coconut oil or avocado or even peanut oil, they all have different smoke points. So it kind of depends on how you're going to be cooking it. So if you do want to be using any other type of fat, I totally suggest that. But two rules to go with that is, one, you want to always make sure that the smoke point is fairly high, so that what that means is that it won't burn easily, especially if you're going to be throwing it on a barbecue, or if you're going to be searing it really hard on a cast iron. You don't want to use olive oil for that. You want to use something that will be able to stand up against that. So just do a little bit of research as far as that's concerned. And the other thing that I like to stick by is light oils with light flavors and heavy oils with heavy flavors. So for example, poultry would do really well with coconut oil, or maybe elk or deer would do really well with a nice rich olive oil. But besides that, as long as you know the smoke point, you should be good.
Excellent. Those are great suggestions. And where do we stand on butter? I love butter.
Oh my God, I love butter. I love butter always. Yeah.
Yeah.
I try to incorporate it as much as possible. I've got oh my goodness, where is it? I have a spice, a rub called birdshot. It's right above my head here. And I like to mix that with butter, and I'll rub that over an entire bird, and you like put it under the skin. It's just spectacular. Compound butters, I absolutely love making. All of my spices work to make compound butters, and that's literally just where you mix the spice with the butter. You could put it on toast. It's so good. I like finishing things with butter because butter has a very low smoke point, so it will burn quite quickly. So for example, if you're going to be doing a steak in a cast iron, I would cook that first with some canola oil or vegetable oil, and then toss a cube of butter into that oil right before it's done cooking. Or you could put together a compound butter and just stick that right on top before you go to eat.
Right. So that's an elk steak, venison steak, anything like that. Excellent.
Yeah. And I like to finish sauces with it as well. So if you're going to make a gravy or a jus or something, just stick a tablespoon or two of butter in there to finish it off, and it'll really, really up the game.
Excellent. Well, so you've just touched on a couple things I wanted to get to next, which is rubs, brines, and marinades. You've got a whole host of spices, and anybody that's joining us tonight or watching this on YouTube can go and check out all the selections. We can put your connection and links in this later. We can talk about it later on. But what do you recommend? Do you have a preference? Rubs, brines, marinades, injections? What are your
general
thoughts? Yeah.
Honestly,
it seems like it's really fussy, right? It seems very fussy. So is it worth it?
Oh God, yeah, it's totally worth it. So usually the purpose of a brine is it basically replaces the water. It takes out all the water. Okay, so this is the brine that we have, and all the instructions are on the back. This is good for 10 pounds of meat. And essentially what that does is it takes out the water and it replaces it with salt. And when that happens, it basically fills all of the little protein membranes and stuff like that, so that when you introduce a sauce to it later, or if you introduce maybe a stock, if you're going to be braising for a long time, if you're going low and slow, it basically opens up the protein and prepares it to take in any flavors. So if you're going to put a rub on it, or if you're going to throw it in to braise, it will take where that salt was and fill it in with flavor. It also breaks down really hard protein structures. So if you have a lot of collagen and elastin, or a lot of fat, or you think that it might have a lot of acidity to it, the salt cleanses it internally, and it'll run through it, and it'll prepare it to take on that flavor and break down really quickly, because it gets a head start on the breaking down of the protein structure. So I really suggest brining meat whenever you can, especially if you are doing a large cut, like a large primal cut, because sometimes you can't penetrate all those layers with the flavor, but the brine will 100% of the time go through that meat. I think it's super worth it. Yeah.
Amazing. And so
yeah.
let's talk about that versus marinating, because you stick a piece of meat in a marinade, you let it sit, you're assuming it's sucking in all of those great qualities. So, you know, is there a recommended time, or is there way too long because I went away for the weekend and I threw it in Friday? Should I cook it Monday? You know, what do you do? What's a good marinade? I mean, what's a good suggestion around marinating?
Yeah, for sure. So brining is a type of marinating. The brine that I make here, as you can see, it's got little speckles in it and stuff like that. So it's kind of preset to give a certain flavor profile that a lot of us associate with meat in general. It's a very generic one. But if you wanted to use any one of our spices in combination with that, like for example, we've got a honey garlic rub here. And that would be so good if you're doing like a pulled pork. You could incorporate that directly into it, and that will be acting as a marinade. You can also brine it just prior to cooking, and then soak it in a marinade as you're getting everything ready, like for the first 10 minutes, and then cook it in that marinade. Usually marinades are a little bit thicker. They have a little bit more of a viscosity to them, so that allows it to turn into a sauce. But usually I really like to incorporate the flavors into the actual brining process, and then utilize those same flavors when it comes to the cooking process of that. Usually, so on the back of there's an actual guide, like a chart for brining. But there's kind of rules about it that you just kind of get to know. Like for example, fish, you never want to brine for more than 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or seafood, just because brines and marinades have a lot of salt and sugar. And when they start to break down those protein structures, that's when you end up with a really gross texture, gross color. It's not going to cook evenly. It's going to fall apart because the protein's literally dissolving. For chicken, for like an entire chicken or larger pieces, or even if they're cut up, if we choose to keep the bones in them, usually that will be about 4 to 6 hours, or you can do it overnight. It really needs to maintain a cold temperature, and then that's good. Kind of the same thing for red meats. You can go a little bit longer with red meats because they can sustain a little bit more damage. I suppose there's a little bit more wiggle room with them, and the same thing with pork as well.
Wonderful. All right. So we've just talked about all the ways to prep it. What if I have a fantastic elk steak, 2-inch cut, and I want to slap it on the grill? So one question, because I was told the way to do it is bring it to room temperature first, keep it super simple, and don't put too much on it. Don't smother it in flavors. So do we change the temperature of the meat before we prep it, or do we just pull it out of the fridge right away and slap it on the grill?
That honestly depends on how you like your steak. So quite often people will say to bring protein of any sort, especially if you're doing large cuts and you're throwing them into the smoker, or if you're doing a low and slow, it's really important to bring that to room temperature. So that's only so that it doesn't take as long. So if you're taking something out of the fridge directly, it's going to probably take you another hour to actually get that up to temp, let alone being finished. I personally like my steak kind of rare, medium rare. So I'll pull it out of the fridge and throw it on the pan immediately. That means that it'll take longer for that internal temperature to cook, and the outside will get nice and crispy and flavorful and good. So it's kind of up to your preference. So just keep in mind that the middle of that meat's going to take longer than the outside. And that's kind of why you want to cook with a high temperature, to get that sear on it. And as far as flavoring it, yeah, that's also kind of a personal preference as well. I really like to do just salt and pepper. I also have a buckshot rub here, or spice rather. It works as a rub too. It's super, super thick. There's like all sorts of stuff. I don't know how well you can see that here. But that's kind of like a Montreal steak spice. And that usually replaces my pepper. And I'll just kind of tap that on there and then throw it on a cast iron or on the grill. One thing to keep in mind if you are over seasoning your steaks is that whatever you're putting on there might have the potential to burn. And that's kind of the gist of that. So if you're putting a rub on there that's got a lot of sugar, or you're putting a marinade on there that's got a lot of sugar, that's going to brown and burn and turn to char and probably not be very good. So that's as far as that goes. Yeah.
Great advice. Yeah, if you need to keep the fire hose at the ready because you've got too much sugar on your meat on the barbecue, that dilutes the flavor, I'm sure. So, oh, we got some great questions coming in. So, let me see. Let's before we get to those questions, which we will, and Casey's going to make sure we do. Let's talk about kids. There's a lot of people here that have one or two of those little guys running around, or maybe grown-up ones running around, and they love food. So how do we make wild game fun for kids? I know personally, my son loves pheasant tacos, and I literally make it simple, easy, and soft shell tacos. Also moose meat chili, really smoky moose meat chili. He loves that. But what are some ideas to get kids eating wild game, and how do you keep it plain and simple and get them eating it?
Honestly, I'm not sure if anybody's tried this yet, but I cannot believe the success that I found in doing duck sloppy joes. It was like absolutely insane. So you just do like a real low and slow with the duck breast, and then you shred it up and you put your sauce in there. The sloppy joes work really great. I really like doing pot pies with any type of game. Schnitzel works really well if you're doing bird. Well, actually, any game really works well for schnitzel, to be honest with you, especially moose. Yeah, pasta. If you feel like getting a little bit experimental, you can make little tortellinis with filling in there, or even just spaghetti sauces and stuff like that. I find work really well, as long as you're able to incorporate that game in a way that kind of blends it so that you're not thinking about it too much and has really strong and aggressive flavors. Then it'll get people's attention before they look at what they're eating. This psychological.
just trying to get kids' attention during dinner time alone, let alone distraction by what's on their plate, right?
Yeah.
No, that's great. I know that I've had the fortunate opportunity to travel to the UK an awful lot, and love the Highlands of Scotland. And there's just something magic about how they prepare their wild game. And it doesn't matter if it's venison or rabbit or salmon or pheasant. It all is absolutely amazing. So I know that it can be done, and I think I agree with your point on the Terre Noire, like the place that it grows and the place that it lives certainly makes it outstanding. So, but it can be fun for kids. I think that early introduction also helps too, right? So, but yeah, I like the pie idea. You put anything in pastry, it's a winner already, right?
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
All right, so 2 more questions, and then we'll get to some of our viewers' questions. So one is just your thoughts on smoking and sous vide with wild game, fish, or fowl. Super popular methods right now. And I know that there's a number of people here that are into smokers, and I have one personally. So love doing that. Sous vide. I know Casey and her family love using the sous vide. I haven't got myself one of those yet. So tell us your thoughts on those 2 cooking methods, and anything you might have done with some wild game lately.
Yeah, for sure. So as far as smoking is concerned, yeah, I love it. I love smoking all the time. It's so great. Like, smoke everything. I smoke some of my spices. Like our barbecue sauce here it's been smoked so much that like you can't really move it. It's just so good. Yeah, I'm super into smoking all the time. I think that it's really important to kind of like, with what you would do with the actual cooking process, to keep in mind what you're going to be eating with that later. So for example, if you're going to be smoking a brisket and you're going to be eating it with potatoes, you can also try and pair that smoke flavor with potatoes as well. Or if you're doing light game, then you can pair your smoking infusion, I suppose, with what would normally go with light meat. So applewood works really well, cherry works really well, but you probably wouldn't want to do something like mesquite because it's super intense. So you kind of want to match that intensity level with your protein. As far as sous vide is concerned, Not really a fan. It's not that I don't like it. I just don't see any use for it. While I was working in the culinary industry, a couple of years before I left the industry, sous vide was just popping off. Like it was going crazy. It was just like everybody wanted everything sous vide, and every YouTube channel was showing you how to do sous vide. And it's just, it's a lot of work for something that can be achieved in another way. But if it works for some people, it's a really good way to control the doneness, which is really handy for people that aren't very good with, getting steak temperatures right or whatever. It's really good for seafood, especially fish, because it's a really gentle cooking method. So all you have to do is finish it by searing. That's handy. It's a whole new science, right? Like it's a whole new thing that not a lot of us are very familiar with. So I could see it being really fun, and it could be a really cool thing to explore. It's just not really for me. I prefer to just cook over fire or cook like hard and fast, and just, I don't know. That's
no fair
maybe
point.
I'm different.
No, everybody has an opinion, and I asked what yours was, so that is absolutely fair. No problem whatsoever. So, lastly, I just want to touch a little bit on sauces, toppings, and drizzles. Because we are in Canada, we've got the great opportunity for some local berries and a variety of things that we can make to enjoy on the wild game itself. Are there items that you've chosen to embrace for your spices that are local, kind of Canadiana?
Yeah, I always keep honey on hand. Honey and butter, to me, I use quite often to be finishing things, especially if I'm doing barbecue. Like incorporating honey is great. Local wines as well. Over the Hill Orchards, just outside of Regina in the valley there, they have an absolutely spectacular selection of wines. They've got some berry wines as well, pit fruit wines as well. Yeah. And I like just really, really finishing sauces with that, because the acid is perfect. It complements perfectly. And you can also do the place with place, which means that you're placing a food item with where another food item came from. So if you're doing bear, for example, red wine would do really well, because bears consume similar things in flavor profile to grapes. A lot of the spices and rubs that I make are actually designed to make a sauce in the pan as you cook. So the barbecue, for example, it's got a lot of elements in it that liquefy when they come in contact with meat juices. So you'll have a pan sauce building as you're cooking. I also have a sweet Cajun rub here. That one does the same thing. I've got my honey garlic that I showed off, and I also have a prairie berry, which has wild blueberries in it, and that one turns into a sauce as well. So as far as starting a sauce or finishing a sauce is concerned, wine, butter, honey, that's kind of all I stick with. I like to keep it simple and let the meat really speak for itself.
Right.
Oh,
Excellent.
and whiskey. Yeah, whiskey
I was gonna add whiskey and beer. The wine, whiskey, and beer are the three things that I like to work into food, depending on what I'm serving and to whom. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I guess while we're talking about that, I have a hack. I have a cooking hack.
Oh,
You can put your
hack.
whiskey in this, and then you could spray it on as you're smoking, and it's so good.
Okay, that's not how to do shooters. Got it. It's
No.
how to spray it on your
It's too small. It's like a teaspoon.
That's right. That's right. All right,
Yeah.
Casey, I'm going to turn it over to you. You've got a bunch of questions from our viewers. What do they want to know?
I do. Okay, so it looks like the first question is from Tara, and she wants to know, what would you use spice technique when using a smoker?
Spice technique when using a smoker. So usually what I would do is I would brine first. So that way, when you are doing that low and slow cooking method, you're maximizing the potential of that wild game. Usually I like to throw a rub on, like a heavy rub. For example, the buckshot works really well. You could really work that into the protein on the outside. And it also has different chunky spices in it that start kind of release their flavor throughout the cooking process. So it's a really adaptive spice. We also have the Parm Herb Rub. This one I suggest for fish. You could pack it on really hard, and it'll actually create a shell of cheesy goodness on the top. Yeah, so good. As well as with the sweet Cajun and the honey garlic, I would do the same thing. All of my rubs and all of my spices, everything is basically meant to be like massaged in, because there's tons of different spices that release throughout the cooking process. So yeah, as far as that's concerned, that's about all I would say. And don't be afraid to use too much, because some of it's going to fall off during the cooking process. Some of it might caramelize really nicely and create a really good crust for you. And maybe the protein will have a hard time taking in some of that flavor. So just get yourself a nice flavorful crust for sure.
More crust, less smoke, because you can overdo the smoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ask me. Okay, Casey, what do we got next?
All right. So Jen and Nadia are both asking about cast iron pan steaks. So they would love some tips on how to do it properly.
Okay, for sure. So usually I suggest making sure that your pan is nicely seasoned. That can be done in a couple of ways. If you use your cast iron all the time, then I wouldn't really worry about seasoning it too often, because every single time you bring that pan up to temp, it's seasoning itself. Especially when you put oil on it and then it goes into the grooves and whatnot and does its thing. That whole thing about using dish soap, we don't have the same like really strong chemicals in our soap like we used to back in the day. So you can actually use soap on your cast irons and it'll be okay. I suggest using a cast iron that's got a lot of surface area, because what happens quite a lot of times when people are trying to do a hard sear on something, or when you're trying to maintain a good heat, a good even heat in your pan, the surface area isn't large enough. So the moment you stick anything on that pan, it cools down the entire pan, and now you're boiling your steak, and you don't want that. So use something with a lot of surface area, because that'll also help you to move your steak onto another surface, which is reintroducing it to a whole new fresh side that will nicely crisp that. I like to make sure that my cast iron is smoking hot, not super aggressive, but just starting to smoke a little bit. And that's when I'll introduce some canola oil or vegetable oil to it, or something that's got a really high smoking point, just enough to glaze it. And then, yeah, you kind of, you have to be brave, I guess. You just jump right in and you slap your steak on and you don't think about it. And the other rule is if you love something, then you'll let it go. So don't be messing with it too much. Don't be turning it over. Don't check on it. Don't ask it how it's doing. Just give it a couple minutes and then flip it over. Usually what I'll do is I'll give it about a minute, because I like my steak to be rare, medium rare, and it's a lot easier to bring a steak up to temperature, but you can't undo a well done steak. So I'll stick the steak on there. I'll usually only put some really thick, I have some smoked whiskey salt that I made. I'll put the salt and the pepper on there, throw it on there, flip it over, and that's it. As far as like telling for the doneness, there's all sorts of little tips and tricks online to tell the doneness. But to be honest, if you ever come across the one that has to do with the finger thing, that's the best one. That's the one that works for me. So.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
That's fantastic. I love cooking with cast iron, and I agree. Doing some pan searing with cast iron is magic. So, Casey, you got another one for us?
Yes. So Jamie Lee is asking. She was told to rub a lemon on leaner meats like moose steak to tenderize it.
Yeah. So lemon and citrus and oranges and all sorts of citrus, they contain acid. And so that acid breaks down those protein structures. The buckshot that I have and the barbecue, I have a lot of acid in them, so they will take that place immediately. So that's kind of part of the reason that I usually will dedicate those rubs and spices to tougher meats, or maybe darker ones that have more of a pungent flavor. Yeah, that works for sure. You can do that. Or if you want to find an acid that tastes a little bit better, you could just put like Worcestershire sauce on there, or soy sauce, or vinegar. Apple cider vinegar works really well, or red wine vinegar works really well too.
Does that help the flavor? A lot of people have an opinion about duck or something that's a really dark bird meat, because it's very livery. Does that acid treatment help reduce that flavor at all? Or is that a whole different thing?
Yeah, it does for sure. So some of the main components that really help to break down that flavor profile, acid it really penetrates that protein and it balances out the acid and bases. They do their thing. It's a science thing. Yeah. Sugar also will do that, and salt will also do that, because sugar and salt actually start cooking the meat the moment it touches the surface. So that means it's breaking it down, and it will do the same thing to those acids. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Tomato works. Tomato works really well. For anybody that wants to do bear for the first time, I super suggest literally only onion, tomato, and garlic And if you've got some like thyme sprigs or rosemary, throw that in there. But like braise that bear for a couple of hours with literally only tomato and it'll just fall apart. It's so good.
I'm getting hungry. I don't know about you guys. I don't know about you guys.
Mine's sitting out in the kitchen right now. So.
That's right. That's right. One more question, Casey. What else do we got?
All right. So actually, I got 2 more questions. Julie wanted to know if you prefer to use your cast iron on the stovetop or in the oven.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the application. Sometimes I'll finish things in the oven on the cast iron. So if I'm doing smaller cuts, I'll just do them on the stovetop at a really high heat and it'll be a really quick cook. It's pretty much just to get a good sear on it and then take it off. But if I'm doing things like a stew, I will braise the meat in the cast iron to get that really hard sear on it. And then I'll deglaze it with something, whether it's like beef stock or chicken stock or wine. And then I'll put it in the oven and continue cooking it in there. Usually if I'm going to be braising something, so what that means is you're cooking something in a little bit of liquid covered. And it's a really good way to get your meat nice and tender and falling apart. That's what you'll do with pulled pork. If I'm making something like a stew, I will start it off in the cast iron and I will finish it in the cast iron because that cast iron is going to hold on to so much flavor that if you let that flavor go, you're ruining your entire meal. And the same thing with the sauces, or the same thing with if you're doing, what else is there? Like goulash. Like goulash is one of my favorite things to do in a cast iron. If I'm doing anything in the oven, it's probably bread, and I do a lot of sourdough in my cast iron in my oven just because it's got a really, really good even heat that doesn't go away for a long time.
Ooh.
Excellent.
And the last question,
okay,
is Nadia, and she wanted to know if you had any tips on cooking squirrel.
Yeah, I really like squirrel if it's got fire. If you've got fire available, definitely barbecue, charcoal, briquettes, that sort of thing. It just tastes really good, honestly. Like it's kind of just like cooking little chunks of chicken, you know. That's kind of it. I mean, I also do have a small game spice, and so this one also has blueberries in it, so it really plays to the terroir of that animal. I mean, I know pot pies work really well as well. Stews work well if you want to incorporate that with other light meats, you can. It works really well in conjunction with other meats.
I think you just launched a new product that is kind of a shake and bake coating. That would be really good for squirrel. I can't wait to try that one. I can't wait to try that one on pheasant and a couple other things. So yeah, I'm excited about that. So speaking of all of your products, where can we find them? How do we buy all this good stuff you're showing us?
For sure. So we have an online shop. If you just click the link in our description on our Instagram page, Hunting Season Spices is our Instagram page. We've also got a website, www.huntingseasonspices.com. That's what it is. We are in a couple of stores. If you guys specifically want to know if we're in your city, just send us a message through the Instagram. We're all over Canada, so we might be where you are too.
Cool. And so I understand you put a little package together today as a prize for one of our guests on the show tonight. So can you tell us what's in the prize package?
Yeah, for sure. I'll show it to you. So I put together a medium-sized prize package. So it's kind of got a little bit of everything. It's in a little Christmas box because we're using everything. It comes with a wild game cooking guide, and it's kind of just got a little bit of information about the company, and then it goes through every single spice that's actually in the package. It goes through the flavor profile and how to use those products. I'm going to be including the Dirty Bird chicken dredge, literally just like KFC, like not even kidding you. It's going to have the prairie berry rub in it, which is really good on darker meat. It's got a really strong earthy flavor to it that goes really well with elk and moose. There will be the honey garlic rub. This is super good for Asian stir fries and lighter meat. It also works really well to braise, but honestly, stir fries, it's like killer. Then we've got the barbecue. This works really well for braising. Honestly, you could even eat it on popcorn. I know a couple of people eat it on popcorn. I'm going to include a beer batter. This takes 1 can of beer. You just mix it up. You dip your fish or whatever you're frying, and that's the extent of that. And then I'm going to include our Gravlax Norwegian fish cure, which basically I don't know if you guys know lox and bagels, kind of. Yeah, that's what it makes. It's going to make that, and that's really good on trout, rainbow trout specifically. I know it's awesome with that.
That's totally amazing. And so can I win? Can I win, Casey? Can I win? Okay. Spin the wheel of winning and let us know who is the lucky prize winner tonight.
All righty. And we've got number 3. So the winner is Nadia.
Nadia, congratulations. You win, and we will give the information to Brianna, and you guys can connect and take care of that. So we can do that a little bit later and take care of that offline. So thank you, everybody, for all those great questions. We can have a chance after the show is done recording, maybe hang around and ask a few more. So what we're going to do now is switch over to our next special guest, and there's a reason why Rob and Brianna are here at the same time. So Brianna, you have one more prop there we haven't used, and that's a special rub that was made in partnership with a company called Bolt Action Coffee. So Rob Knibbs, thanks for joining us. Let's talk about this little jewel of spice, and let's talk about the company.
Right on. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I'm glad you're recording this because otherwise I'd be taking notes the whole time here. Brianna's so unique as far as her skill and understanding of wild game. This is great. So I'm gonna take some notes and when you guys put this live on YouTube. So Bolt Action Coffee, we started this through the Call Sign 66 team. If you guys are familiar with Call Sign 66, they're and we're a long-range shooting and training company. So we work with a few different target audiences, military, police, and then as well civilian hunters and long-range precision shooters, both of those disciplines. So it's something that was started by Miles Moser, who's a retired Canadian sniper, and I worked with him a little bit in the military, but got to know him better when I started, and we both left the military and started long-range precision shooting. So one thing you'll find about soldiers, they like shooting. They also drink copious amounts of coffee. So the problem is we drank any kind of coffee we could get our hands on. And we got to a stage in our lives where we're a little more sophisticated, and we started dabbling in better coffee and realized just how hard it is to get great, fantastic coffee. And that led us on a path to finding specialty coffee roasters. And as we got enjoying better brews, we said, why don't we just start a coffee company that focuses on quality instead of just branding? And that's really where Bolt Action Coffee was first born.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I was just writing a note, but now I don't have to remember. I can just say it. We're working with Call Sign 66 on a ladies' rifle day coming up this year. Casey took their course last year, and I wasn't able to join, but we're going to put it together again this year. So for all you ladies interested in learning the long game, whether it be to make your hunting experience better and more successful, or it's something you're interested in perhaps for precision long-range competition, which is a huge hit with so many people in Canada. So yeah, Call Sign 66 are a bunch of fantastic guys, and we can't wait to work with them again this year. So that's fantastic. So it's a Canadian small business. It's about great people and great coffee. So when we talked earlier today, Robert, you said we're going to talk about specialty coffee. So what is specialty coffee?
Well, it is an actual formal term for coffee. There's so much garbage coffee out there, especially in the North American market. So much.
Is garbage coffee a formal term as well? Just curious.
No, yeah, it should be a formal term. And the North American market is really full of substandard coffee. Between, say, South America and Europe, when you go and have a cup of coffee there at any cafe, you're getting a much better brew. What we do here instead in North America is push volume. We also over roast and do a lot of different things just to move the volume of coffee as opposed to the quality. So specialty coffee is an actual formal term, and it's talking about the top 5% to 2% of any harvest year's coffee beans. and they're graded, they're sifted through, and substandard beans are pulled out of it, and it's different portions of the actual harvest that are picked and handpicked to be considered specialty. And then there's a certification for individual coffee Q testers, they call them, and that's their job, and their certification is their ability to ascertain a scoring level or a cupping level. So anything over 80 points is what we consider specialty coffee. And it's interesting because you get something like most of our standard roasts that we sell are about an 86. And the difference between an 86 cupping of coffee and a 92 is unbelievably different, both in quality and even cost and how rare it is. So once you get above 80, you're talking about a really fantastic cup of coffee. Of course, when you grind it and brew it properly.
Right, of course. And you have a selection of coffees at Bolt Action. I do have a personal favorite, is the Overwatch. And but I did get a chance. You had a specialty for Remembrance Day. So tell us about your selection of coffees you currently have, and if there's any new ones on the way.
Well, right now we have three. Well, we have a decaf, which, you know, we got to have decaf once in a while, or suppressed coffee. Which is actually fantastic for decaf coffee. I don't drink it a lot myself because I just love caffeine, but you know, that's me. Our medium roast, or correction, our light roast that we have is called Scopes Up, and it's a really nice coffee. It's got some amazing flavor notes. And light coffee is interesting because it actually has more caffeine than something that's been roasted to a darker roast. Overwatch is my personal favorite as well. It's a medium roast. It's actually a really good espresso coffee as well, and does well when you press it. But it's just flavorful, and it's just the best cup of morning coffee you can have. And
I enjoy it hot and cold. So I've made iced coffee with it, and it's got such a sweet flavor profile that I've enjoyed it. Or in the event I get busy and my cup goes cold, then you're not afraid to drink the rest of what's in the bottom. You don't have to reheat it. So it is actually quite delicious. So tell us about what you guys did at Remembrance Day. I thought that was really it's the first time I've ever heard of that kind of a coffee blending application or preparation.
Yeah, we were talking with our roasting partner about doing something special. As a veteran-owned business, we wanted to come up with something interesting for November 11th. And we came up with what's called the 11th hour blend. And what they did is they aged the coffee with wine. So they take the actual beans, they age it for a period of time, and then it actually takes on the flavor notes of the wine, which was very cool. And it's just a neat thing to do. It's very unique. I'd never heard of it before. And it's something that takes some extra time and effort. So we had a very small batch. I think we only had about 225 bags, 1 pound bags, that we were able to pull from that batch. But just a really cool thing. And it sold out in a New York minute. You know, with the existing veteran community that we have, I had friends and old comrades phoning me, and you know, it was gone overnight. So I think that's something we're going to do every year, and just do it a little bit different every time, because it's, you know, it's fun to try new things, like we were saying with any sort of spicing or any sort of changes. You want to try something new and just see what you can do with it.
Absolutely. And now you've launched a new one, something to do with canoeing.
Yeah, I got a bag of it right here. It's Midnight Canoe Trip is what this is. This is our first dark roast, and we had strayed away from dark roast because it's a tough thing to do well. Because when you get into dark roasting coffee, you're getting at the tail end of roasting it to where it gets too strong, too bitter, too, you know, like a tire tasting coffee. And we've all, I don't like to talk about other coffee brands or companies, but we've all tasted that type of coffee where it's so black and so strong. And a lot of chains do that because then they can keep their flavor consistent across all of North America or all of Canada. And the challenge with that is it really kills the flavor. So we spent about 6 months messing around with different blends and understanding dark coffee and trying it, and finally settled on just an amazing dark roast that still has a lot of flavor. It has an amazing finish, and I'm really excited about it. I enjoy it. It's something everyone should try because it's unlike a dark coffee that anyone's ever had if you've just been drinking traditional coffee.
I can't wait to try it. I haven't placed it. I have a regular order every 2 weeks. I get 2 pounds of Overwatch, and I threw in a bag of the spices to give it a try. So now I know that Brianna just stepped away. I was going to ask if you're going to do any more collaborations with coffee and hunting season spices.
Yeah, I think that's something we want to do. Hey, Brianna?
Yeah, that'd be super cool. Honestly, like when we were first working out the recipe and stuff like this, we came up with so many good combinations and good ideas for these coffee rubs, and it's been going really well, and there was a huge draw for it. Yeah, I'd love to expand for sure.
What is the coffee that's in the sweet and sticky rub that you guys have together?
That was Overwatch that we put in there.
No wonder I liked it so much, right? So yeah, I've put it on grilled meat. I've put it in chili. I might put it on my eggs this weekend. Who knows? It's good stuff. It's really, really good stuff. So absolutely enjoy it. And actually, Casey and I have had the opportunity to accept the great opportunity to be ambassadors of Bolt Action Coffee. So if anybody has had the opportunity to try it, great. If you haven't, and you go to the Bolt Action Coffee website and you throw Lady Gun in your for your code, you'll get 10% off your order too. And you can throw in some hunting season spices while you're at it. So all right, so preparation and storage and those tips and tricks and debunking the myths. We talked about this earlier because people do strange things. They grind coffee in blenders, they freeze it to keep it fresh. You were going to share some good things with us. So
yeah, there's a couple key things, and the first thing is actually grinding coffee. It's way more fresh when you grind it just before you brew, and it's infinitely better as far as the flavor notes and just the overall quality of your actual cup. When it comes to grinding, there's lots of what you'll see is like blade grinders. They're really small, and they've just got a simple blade that rolls around. They're not the best thing to grind with. If you have to, I guess that's okay. But what it does is it actually burns the coffee as it rips it apart with the blade. So what you want to have is some sort of either hand grinder or a burr grinder is what it's called. And a burr grinder has 2 plates that move in opposite directions, and it gives you a nice even grind for one, so you can set the grind coarseness, relatively speaking, and then allows you to not burn it and get a nice even grind on the whole thing.
I burned out, pardon the pun, 3 grinders because they were lower quality, and they were the blades. And then I went and spent the money on a burr grinder, and it's made a world of difference. It lasts. I certainly have to clean it and take it through its paces, but it makes an absolute difference. So so now we've talked about fresh grinding, and we've talked about how to grind. What about water temperature and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we've got a really nice detail on our website. So feel free and check that out. We've got all our brewing techniques, and actually our roasting partner actually made some videos to show as well. The big thing on water temperature is you want to be below boiling. When you pour it over at boiling, it brings out the bitterness of the coffee. So if you do have a thermometer, you want to be at around 93 Celsius or 212 Fahrenheit, I believe was 93.
That's for a pour over.
That's for a pour over, or generally speaking, that's what you want to be running with. And when it comes to actually brewing coffee, there's a standard pour over is really nice. A Chemex is outstanding. And one thing with Chemex is if you're using paper filters that don't have any chemicals in it, because then you don't have that leach through. And I use an AeroPress in the field when I'm out hunting or whatever. They're really small and compact, and that's another great piece of kit to have for making coffee anywhere at any time.
Well, you always need to make coffee in the field, right?
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Now, what about storage?
Yeah, first of all, whole bean is always better. We offer ours as ground coffee because we do have some customers that actually serve it right away, or just their conditions. We've got some mine sites actually that are bringing it in for all of their people and their actual cafeterias, which is awesome. And they just simply don't have the means to grind 5 pounds at a time for a meal. So we do have it as ground, but whole bean is always better. And keep it at room temperature. The bags are designed to actually keep the freshness longer because they've got the proper seal on them, and they allow air flow through the little node that's in there. But don't freeze coffee. Everyone thinks that if you take coffee and grind it and throw it in the freezer, even whole bean, it actually is harsher on the whole bean itself and will lessen your freshness more quickly than just leaving it in the pantry until you're ready to use it. Now, on that note, Deneen, you were talking about our shipping timelines and everything, and I wanted to address that because we get that question all the time. We batch roast every week. So what batch roasting does is it allows us every week to hard on hand ship coffee as fresh as humanly possible. So we have an order cut off every Monday morning, and we get that fulfillment started on Monday afternoons, and then we do our roasting on Tuesday so we can get it out midweek. And what that allows us is you have literally the freshest coffee you could possibly have, unless you drove up to the roaster yourself and got your beans right out of the machine. So it's something we're really proud of, and we really don't want to back away from that, no matter how big we get, because we feel that's a very unique thing that we can offer.
I had ordered the coffee, and I had it shipped to my parents' place, and they have a mailbox out on the street. And so it was a warm summer's day, and I kept going out every day to check, and it wasn't there, and it wasn't there, and it wasn't there. And then we got there the third or fourth day along, and I didn't even have to open the mailbox because the smell of the fresh roasting was permeating the entire mailbox. It was pretty fantastic. But I do have a reminder for every 2 weeks to buy 2 pounds because I hate missing Monday. If I forget and it's Tuesday, I know I have to wait a whole other week. So it is fresh, and it is absolutely worth it. I think it's probably the best coffee I've had, and I've had the fortunate opportunity to travel a lot of places in the world and try some great coffee. So yeah, I'm a fan, absolutely. So so where do we find you guys? How do we find it? How do we buy it, Rob?
Well, there's a few ways. We have, of course, you can order online anytime. It's at boltactioncoffee.com. We also have a list of current retail outlets that we have set up in mainly Alberta and Saskatchewan, and a couple in Ontario. With COVID the way it was so tough to set those up, and people weren't sure, even on their retail side. So we really focused on the online ordering. But there is a limitation with that as far as shipping. We're bound to Canada Post really for shipping, and it is a little bit cost prohibitive. So what we find a lot of our customers do is they get together with 2 or 3 friends and they bulk ship together, because you can ship infinitely less expensive. Like if you ship about 20 pounds of coffee, it works out to about $1 a pound to ship it most anywhere in Canada. Whereas you order 1 pound, you're paying $10 to $15, which doesn't make as much financial sense. So as the restrictions, lessen up with COVID, we're going to be setting up a lot more retail outlets. And on that note, if anyone's listening and you're interested in either serving the coffee in your restaurant, which we've had some really good success with, or if you want to become a retail outlet, please get a hold of us. Just hit the contact button on the bottom of our website, and we'd be happy to set you up.
And when we were allowed to serve coffee, when Ladyguns was having outdoor events, we served the coffee and sampled the coffee and sold the bags right from our events. So yeah, hopefully we can get back to doing stuff like that and enjoying a cup together, not 6 feet apart, right? So
absolutely.
All right, Casey, have you got any questions for Rob about coffee?
I do. So the first question is from Nadia, and she was asking, where do you source your beans from, and where is it processed and roasted?
Well, we source our beans from all over the world. There's basically every bag, and if you go on our website, it gives you a full breakdown of where the beans are sourced and how they're sourced, even with different harvest times of year and elevations and things. And that's the sort of exacting measure that they take with the different beans as well. We have a roasting partner in Vancouver. They're called Uhtred Coffee and Tea, and they are just absolutely phenomenal. They have some world-class roasters, and with their actual Q testers, they're able to give us just that unmatched quality. So they've been a great partner in this process too.
So that's where our coffee comes from when we order it online, is from
You
Vancouver?
betcha. Yeah, we
Excellent.
ship everything direct from Vancouver.
Thank you. Casey, another question.
Okay, so the next one is from Brianna, and she's asking, have you considered making instant coffee? Evil, I know, but sometimes more convenient in the field.
Yeah, it's something we took a very quick look at, and to get to scale where we could actually do that, we're really not in the volume where we could make it profitable yet. And it's something that would be a big research and development project. I fear our limitation would be that we just couldn't achieve the quality that we would otherwise have. So yeah, we haven't pursued it yet.
Thank you.
Any more questions, Casey? I noticed Tara said she just ordered, so she used the Ladygun code, and obviously it's going to be in your mailbox someday soon.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any more questions right now. So
well, then we should give coffee away, don't you think? Or at least the I don't know if it's coffee, Robert, what you're giving away, but Bolt Action Coffee's got some kind of gift package for us. So
yeah, you bet. We'll have a big prize pack with a whole bunch of goodies, including coffee, of course.
Yeah, the website's got some swag and some stickers and some cups, but the coffee is the reason I go there. So Casey is going to draw a lucky winner, and we're going to give Rob the information.
All right, so we have Kim. Kim online?
Kim was online. I saw her name. Congratulations, Kim. Kim Vandervree, welcome. Welcome. Excuse me. We welcomed you a long time ago. Congratulations. Let's try that. So, congratulations, Kim, and we will connect you with Robert, and you will enjoy the coffee. That's fantastic. All right. So that is an amazing bunch of questions about food. I am super hungry, and I'm glad I do have the decaf. I might even go make a cup of that. It goes really nice with Bailey's, just so you know. So it's enjoyable. And I want to thank our special guests, Brianna and Rob, for joining us tonight and sharing with us where we can get your fabulous products. Casey will make sure that that information is also posted so that when this is on YouTube, people can go find you forevermore. So as I mentioned, we are an ambassador, a proud ambassador of Bolt Action Coffee. So please enter Ladygun when you order, and you'll get 10% off. So before we leave tonight, just a couple of things I usually like to do. We like to talk about upcoming events and activities for women to get out and have fun. So the events are starting to roll in. There's a few things going on, even with COVID restrictions, because they're outdoor activities. It is allowing us to do a little bit. And Casey puts them on our event page on our Ladyguns website. So if you know of or participating in something, then we will make sure to put that on. A couple of new things that we have. Feel free to go check it out. In May, the Ladies Trap League in De Winton with the HIA starts. In May, the Junior Shoot every Sunday at Silver Willow Sporting Clays in Carstairs, where kids get out and shoot sporting clays. And then in June, every Sunday in June, is the Ladies Learn to Shoot. All of these events are for new and first-time shooters. And if you want to put together a Ladyguns team, I will be with you at Carstairs, and we'll have a great time. So that's some events. Another thing you can do to support women in the shooting sports, for those of you interested in becoming a CCFR gunny girl, the entries for the Calendar Girls closes at the end of April, and all the money that's raised in selling the calendars supports women in the shooting industry. So Ladyguns has been super happy to take the opportunity to work with CCFR, and they've been sending us sponsor money for our events when we had events. So another thing we're working on is some outdoor adventure days. We're talking with Lisa from Lisa Roper Outdoors. We're putting together some fishing adventures and some shooting adventures. And I saw Nadia was asking about the the horseback riding. It's coming. We're putting it together, and that will be an adventure day in the Rockies on horseback. So, and then obviously we're always looking for ambassadors, content creators, and special guests for Ladyguns Live. So let us know if you've got some ideas, if you're interested, if you want to provide content. We love having new members of the Ladyguns tribe. So lastly, what are we going to do next? So in 2 weeks for Ladyguns Live, we've decided to let the dogs be in charge. So we're going to celebrate our furry friends. And my dog's vet is from Woodlands Veterinary Hospital. And so we have a couple of vets coming to talk us about pet care. So when you're hiking in the woods, when you're camping, or you're hunting in the backcountry and you've got your dog, there are ticks and skunks and porcupines. And do you have a dog first aid kit? So that's what we're going to talk about. And then I had a great conversation with a friend yesterday. It turns out that I think we're going to get Jet. Jet is a border collie, and he's going to come with his human, TJ Schwanke from Outdoor Quest TV. And they're going to talk, I guess Jet won't talk, but maybe TJ will. And they have a story about getting Alberta to legalize the use of pack dogs in support of big game hunters and also in support of saving grizzlies. So Jet is a very handsome border collie. I look forward to having him and his human TJ join us. And I look forward for all of you dog lovers and dog owners to come and join us for that one. So if you have a dog, it'll be a great show. So remember, we can be found on the web at ladyguns.ca. Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, follow, comment, and share, and feel free to reach out to us at Ladyguns if you want to get involved. Thank you all once again for joining us for this episode of Ladyguns Live. I encourage you all to find a way to get off the sidelines and live your best life. Get out, give it a go, and Casey and I hope to see you there. Have a great evening, everybody, and we will see you all next time.